Welcome back to another episode of Joe's Coral Reef. Today we're going to be cleaning rock, bleaching rock, cutting rock, and epoxying rock for my next tank. So I took all the rock, I blew it off with a hose, then I soaked it in RO water and I would scrub it every once in a while, changing the RO water. I did this for a few days, trying to get anything out of it I could. I was amazed that the next step I did was I bleached it in 20% bleach, and I probably soaked it in the bleach for over a week, turning it, rotating it. I had a power head in there. I could not believe how much stuff came out of the rock. I couldn't believe it. I mean, there was all types of little things that came out of the rock. I'm thinking, I power washed this rock. I soaked it in RO water. Where did all this stuff come from? You know, I've done muriatic acid before, and I really thought it etched away too much of the rock. So this time I wanted to try the bleach, and I thought it did pretty good. There was even a crab body that wound up coming out of there. I don't know what all these little black things were. They wound up coming out of there too. There was a ton of stuff that came out with the bleach. And I would just turn it in there. I had the power head, trying to agitate it, get it going. I thought it worked pretty good. In the end here, you can see that crab floating around on top. So then what I did was I transferred into a tank with salt water, a heater, and a skimmer. And every once in a while I would change the water. I would take these rocks out and I would dunk the rocks in fresh water, just to try to shake loose anything that might be in there. I didn't do that often. I think I changed the water maybe 2 times. But you know, I was soaking these rocks with other rocks that I had probably soaked for a long time. And you know, I've been dumping in bacteria. Every once in a while I'll feed them, just to try to, you know, pull out any type of phosphates or anything that's bound up in the rock out, you know, trying to create that nitrifying bacteria. Even had a couple of marine pure blocks floating around in there.
So I flipped through all my rock, and I took a couple pieces out that I want to use as the base. Something I look for in a base rock, the bottom rock, not necessarily the base, is I don't want a lot of the rock to sit on the sand. I want it to be up. I want an area underneath here for at least some type of water flow. So I kind of want some pegs, 2 or 3 legs for the rock to sit on. What I also want to do is I want to cut away some of this rock. It is so dense that I don't think there's a benefit to any nitrifying bacteria deep inside the rock. Maybe there'll be a cryptic zone, but for the most part it's so solid, I don't think we'll get a benefit. So I do want to add a benefit of some caves for some fish, gobies, microbrittles, areas for stuff to travel through the rock. To do that, I'm going to use a rotozip. I've just got this basic 2-flute bit. It will cut this rock like butter, but if you push too hard, you can crack this bit. It'll break right off. So you've got to move very gently, let the bit do the work, and let it cut away the rock. In this ocean rock, who knows what it contains? All these dust particles, you're cutting into it. You're going to want to wear some type of respirator. Just to be safe, you don't want to inhale any of this type of dust. And then maybe some eye protection. I mean, you've got a sharp bit, little pieces could be flying. So we're going to do that. We're going to cut away parts of it. I'll look at it so I can maintain the structure. So only a few legs will be down, and we'll carve up into it, maybe some caves. We'll see what we can do. We'll see what happens. I could use a chisel and hammer, right? A lot of people do that. The problem is this rock is really brittle. It will crack. It'll crack into pieces. I want to try to maintain as large pieces as I can. All right, let's get to it. Let's start cutting away the rock.
So let's just take a second to talk about the tools I used. I use a rotozip with a flex shaft. I used this Wen tool I bought from Amazon with a flex shaft. And I used a Dremel tool with a flex shaft. The rotozip with the flex shaft was really good. It's a powerful tool, and you're really able to cut through the rock. The problem is they don't make the flex shaft for it anymore. Mine wound up breaking. I couldn't find another one, so I tried the Wen tool. The Wen tool is a piece of crap. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. Later on, you'll see I used the Dremel tool. That works pretty good. It's good enough to get the job done. Maybe not as powerful as the rotozip, but definitely good enough to get the job done. So the rotozip with just the 2-flute bit, it really cuts through that rock like butter. some of the time I would make cuts in the rock, and then I would, in those little cracks, I just stick a screwdriver in there and just pop those little pieces off, just to get them loose. I mean, it works way better than a chisel and a hammer, and it is not hard at all. I mean, the Rotozip cuts through it really fast. And what I was amazed with is this rock is so dense that you can really put a lot of caves in there, little perches, you know, caves that come out in the front, but they go through the back. And I really think it's a good idea because you can get flow up inside the rock that you normally couldn't get. I know you want some, you know, dead zones or cryptic zones or stuff like that, but these are, you know, some of these rocks are really huge, and in the inside you have no flow, and you're just kind of bringing in organics and this type of stuff, and it will never come out, right? It's bound up in the rock. So instead of using smaller pieces, I actually found an acro inside the rock. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was inside the rock. There's no way you could see it. It was buried in there. Amazing. So now I started using the flex tool so I could get a little deeper with the cuts, and I really did carve out a ton from the inside of this rock. With the same type of thing, just carving it out, sticking a screwdriver in there, and just popping them loose. And it's really not that hard. It is a little tedious because every time you do it, you find a new little area you want to carve out, or how can I carve this out, or so, you know, you can do this forever, I think. But it's really cool. I think it really added to my aquascape. All these little caves and I mean, look at that. That was a whole area that was not even occupied before. Now a fish can go in there, crabs or whatever could go in there. So I originally wanted to lay this rock down, and that was going to be the underside, but I actually stood it up so you could see that. So the next rock that I carved, this was another huge hunk of Pukani. I think it's about 18 inches long. And what I did with that one is I carved out the whole inside. And when I mean the whole inside, I wish I had like a camera I could stick inside there, because I actually carved out the whole inside. It is pretty awesome. There's some huge caves in there that run through the whole piece. And again, I think it's really good because if you have a power head and you have these big caves, you can actually get water flow through there. It's not going to be, you know, super water flow to blow everything out, but you could put a power head in there and clean out the inside of this rock. This flex shaft is really the tool to have. You know, it allows you to, yeah, you can see me. I stuck that flex shaft all the way in there. It was really cool. I would definitely do this again. Definitely. I would actually maybe cut some of the holes a little bigger. I wasn't sure how big to make them because, you know, you could make them, you could basically size them whatever size you want to allow certain fish in there or not in there. So I'm just carving it out. I spent quite a lot of time carving that out.
So we've got the rock, we've trimmed most of the rock out. It's hollow, a lot of this is hollow, there's a hollow center in here. This one's hollow, we've cut the bottom side of that one out using the Dremel with the flexible bit. What we're going to do now is build the structures. I've got a bunch of rock here, little pieces to use, super glues, putties, super glues. So I'm going to use this to lay out my rock, give me an idea of where it needs to be in the center, because I want two structures, and then we'll go from there. This one's nice. I was able to, I haven't glued it yet. I just got a piece underneath there. And I'm gonna epoxy it.
Okay, so now we're getting to the fun stuff. I use this epoxy kind of like a binder, right? It's not a glue, it's not like a super glue, but if you, like I did there, I put a bunch of epoxy on there and then I stuck little rocks inside the epoxy, kind of creating like an aggregate, right? Like a concrete. In this particular joint here, I used epoxy, I used rocks, and then I actually took another piece of epoxy over the outside of it again. and then I use more rocks. And then I would also fill it in with the super glue gel, just to add a little strength to the joint. And I was really able to get very strong joints that you cannot see. You know, you can't see that epoxy. All you see is these little rocks that were cut from the inside. I mean, I cut so much rock out of the inside. I had a shoebox overflowing full of these little pieces, and they match the rock perfectly. So it's just going through the box, finding a little piece, and just jamming it in there. They were very strong. I mean, all these legs and shelves and ledges that I built doing this method were actually very strong. And the best part of all, you cannot see that purple epoxy. I know they have it purple because it's supposed to look like coralline, but it never looks like coralline, right? So that's all I did here. I kept doing the same thing, epoxy, tiny little pieces of rock, sticking them in there. You can see it's kind of loose, and you just hold it together. And then once in a while I'd go with some super glue gel, and I would just squeeze some super glue gel into the joints. So this is that huge piece of rock that's all hollow in the inside. I've built 2 legs for it to stand that whole rock upright. So again, I had a little piece of rock. I put the epoxy on there so they fit together perfectly, and then I used little pieces of rock with epoxy around the outside. You can see me fitting them in there now, you know, to build that strength. And then it's look at that, you can't even tell I made that leg. It turned out really, really cool. Yeah, look at those, both those legs I made. So this was that piece of rock. I was gonna have that piece laying down, but I decided to stand it up. I thought it was pretty cool. Just, you know, I looked at the grain structure of that Pukani and kind of decided it that way, just to make it, I don't know, make it look better. So here again, I'm just a little super glue gel in holding the rocks in there, just to build out that leg to hide it. This rock I really went, I guess you could say, crazy on, because this whole leg, right, this leg I added right there, that one in the front, and then I went and I added shelves and all kinds of stuff on there. I mean, this piece on the top was a big piece, and that's what I did. I used epoxy with little rocks inside of it like an aggregate, and then I went over it again with little pieces of rock like that, super gluing it and using epoxy to hold it all together. It turned out, I thought it turned out pretty good. You can't even tell some of the joints of where they're at. Here's another one. So those 2 pieces were together. They're with epoxy. Right, you can see the epoxy there, and I just took little pieces of rock and fit it in there. So here's this rock, and there's some of the caves I carved in there. And you can see the way that grain structure of the Pukani runs up. That's why I wanted to stand that rock up. That yellowy rock on top, I added that whole piece of rock on there. That's going to be a ledge. There's some more ledges I added. Added some other rocks in there. And then I got a little crazy and I started sticking little rocks to the outside. I thought it would give me a place to put coral and that type of stuff. So there's my rock structures. That is it. Look at the caves in the inside there. I mean, really, you could spend so much time just making little intricate caves and all kinds of crap in there. Yeah, I could have used little pieces and stacked them, but you can see I've only got 3 tiny spots that are resting on the stand, and basically this is just one piece. And it's not too huge. I mean, I could lift this thing out of the water, right, because I did carve out most of the inside. This stuff is not that heavy anymore. It really isn't. Just kind of showing you what I did with the little pieces of rock stuck everywhere. And here's the 2 pieces that I'm going to be putting in the tank. So thanks for tuning in. We're going to fill this sucker with water. Bulk Reef, I'm out.